drafted, and his first year and a half with the Oilers, where he had some very, very bad teams that people had hoped would be good. Obviously, bringing in Neil Yakupov didn't work out for them. Relied heavily on Taylor Hall and Jordan Eberle to try to carry the way. And they had Ben Scrivens in net for both of those seasons. So not much you can really blame on coaching there. So I think he's due another shot in the NHL, and hopefully that's next year or the year after, with the Ducks.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Looking at Randy Carlyle, maybe he's going to be on the hot seat here if the Ducks get off to a bad start, and you might see something change. I mean, we didn't see a coach fired till the very end, or was it the end of the season this year with Alain Vigneault, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, I believe so. Did we get through the whole season? I know we got through to the halfway mark, and it was a big thing because I think they hadn't made it to that point where a coach hadn't got fired in a long time. I think we made it to season's end, though. I don't think anybody got fired. And yeah, Alain Vigneault was the guy who got fired right, I think, when playoffs started. He got fired, or right after the season ended. He was ready to go. I think it was comical because it was a day after the season ended.
I think that was the first one. I honestly, that might have been the only one.
Well, yeah, because he got fired, and then Glenn Gulletson got fired in Calgary, right?
Right.
And then I think that was it. I think aren't those the only two guys who got fired? There was a couple.
And then off the top of my head that I could think of, yeah.
Yeah, there's Lou Lamoriello was let go in Toronto, but he's a general manager, and Carolina shook up their coaching staff too. Bill Peters got Dallas too. Dallas Hitchcock retired, so Dallas lost a coach as well.
Right, but that was planned.
Yeah. So, but still, there was a couple things there with guys moving around, and who just signed the coach out of Boston University?
The Rangers.
The Rangers. Right. So
yep.
It was the Rangers. Okay. So yeah. So there was 4 coaching jobs that shifted, but it was until the offseason.
So yeah, I mean, Randy could have his hands full. He gets the pass for the injuries this year. I think Bob Murray does too. I don't think ownership's going to look to get rid of him. But next season is going to be just interesting how this team shakes out because Bob Murray's in charge of the player personnel, bringing guys in. Randy Carlyle's in charge of how he manages their ice time, but he can only move the pieces that he's given. So I think Bob's kind of got to watch himself this summer as well and put together a competitive team for next season. I mean, get faster. Let's see it. You got a lot of no-move clauses everywhere, man. You'll see how that works out for him. But, I mean, I wouldn't mind Dallas Eakins coming in and taking over if things got shook up. And I think by bringing in an assistant coach, that would just make it that much easier because you don't have to worry about cleaning out an entire coaching staff. You just got to worry about replacing the head coach.
Yeah, and interesting thing that I saw yesterday, I think, that Bob was saying, was he said that the difference between the Ducks and the Sharks in that series was fourth liners like Marcus Sorensen and Melker Karlsson and those types of guys. So it's another quote that kind of confirms what he's looking to do this offseason is add speed and then just add some depth to the fourth line because the Ducks' fourth line wasn't great.
They got Captain Canada and Jason Chimera, who are extremely fast players.
Yeah. Well, he goes from that. He goes from saying, he goes from getting those two guys at the deadline to then saying, we should have had guys like Melker Karlsson and Marcus Sorensen. Well, then you should have gone out and got some of those guys or brought a guy like Kalle Kossela from San Diego or Kevin Waugh and then had some guys like that on your roster. I mean, you have guys like that down in San Diego. So it's tough to sit there and complain saying we didn't have those guys when you probably could have called up those guys.
Yeah, come on, it's like it's science. You know, you just got to figure out what you need and bring it up. It's in the system. I mean, whatever. Bob made mistakes. Hopefully he can clear those up this summer. Do you want to get over to some listener questions from social media?
Yeah, sure. I'll have to. We had a couple on Twitter, and I think we got one on Instagram yesterday. So let me pull up the Twitter ones here. All right, so we had Alex McKay asked, he said, how short is Randy's lease this year, and will he get another free pass because of injuries?
I would say his leash, they got it. You can't have, if everyone's healthy and they have an October like they had last October, he's in trouble.
Yeah.
And then I don't think they're going to.
Injuries again.
No, the injuries are done. You can't, say Ryan Kesler is going to give him a free pass if it turns out that the Kesler news or rumors are going to come true. There's plenty of people that can step in and kind of fill that role partially until he's healthy or replaced with somebody who's equally as talented, if that's the case. But yeah, I don't think the injuries are going to matter, and he's got to put this team up and perform. If they got to be near the top of the division for the first half of the season for him to be okay.
Yeah. What happens if they win the cup? Like, does he just get signed long term for like 6 years, and then he's just here for the bad days that follow after that? And then we're sitting here saying, well, why did Bob Murray do that and sign him for 6 years? And I mean, it would be great. You won the cup, yeah, but then you also have Randy Carlyle signed for 6 years or whatever, how long he gets signed after that.
If the only way that they even get to that point next season with the cup is if everyone has an insane run, everyone gets hot, and they know how to be disciplined. And that's one of the biggest problems the Ducks have is staying out of the damn box. They can't do it, and it goes all the way up to management. They love this big, buff grinding game where you run guys, you yap all the time, you give guys little whacks, and it's a culture on that team that it just goes up to management. And I feel like Randy Carlisle's a huge part of that. You got to rein your guys in. Who cares about who's captain or alternate captain? I mean, you got to bring these guys in, and that can't be okay. I mean, they had an atrocious Game 3 against the Sharks in the playoffs that was out of control. Like, what the hell was going on there, Randy? Bring your guys in.
Not only would guys have to get hot either. I mean, like the young guys like Steele and Jones and Terry would have to fill in the lineup and like do well. I mean, like Gwen Bombase in the chat, he said, win the cup. I'm more worried we might not make the playoffs. I mean, that's essentially where the Ducks are at. I don't actually think they're going to win the cup, but I could just imagine a scenario where they do, and then Randy Carlyle gets like a 10-year deal, and we're all sitting here crying for the next 10 years.
Like kind of what happened up in Long Island when the owners gave Garth Snow that insane long deal as a general manager. Yeah. But yeah, I was just trying to take that and run with it because I just get frustrated anytime someone talks about Randy Carlyle. What if he stays? Like, God, please no, because he's just not good. He's just not.
Yeah, Alex had another question here. We kind of handled it a bit, but he was asking us what we could tell him about the new assistant coach and what we predict the D pairings to be in October based off that.
You're going to get a healthy Cam Fowler, so I feel like you're going to see Fowler, and he's going to be paired with Brandon Montour because that pairing killed it when they finally figured out they could put a guy who was talented with another guy who was equally talented together. And then you're going to see Lindholm and Manson. It's that third pairing. We're going to have to wait and see who's ready come training camp. And maybe they go out and get I knew you were going to say that. I was just going to say if they're going to go out and get a UFA and bring him in to see what kind of happens there. I'm not so sure that'll be the case, but you never know with this Bob Murray team. They could go out and just pluck a veteran and put him back there like they did with Boschman.
Yeah, I don't think there's a big question mark really on the D pairings. I mean, we pretty much know what pairing 1 and 2 are going to look like. It all depends on what they do on that bottom pairing, whether it's Pettersson and Walensky or Jakob Larsson gets a shot or Jacob Magna comes back up, or they go out and they get a Ian Cole or somebody else in free agency and bring them in. I mean, that's the only question mark I think that they have on the blue line. So I don't think it changes much whether you bring in a free agent or you bring up some of the young guys. I think you're not gonna see too much flashy stuff in that bottom pairing.
No.
So let's move on to the next question. We got Victor again on Twitter. He wants to know who we have right now that will get re-signed of our UFAs and our RFAs, and he says, would Vermette be a good player to re-sign if Kesler is out long term?
I don't think so. I mean, we talked about it at the end of last year. Even RC acknowledged that, or was it RC or Bob Murray acknowledged that Vermette the game's kind of passed him up. I want to say that was Randy Carlyle. Or was it Murray?
I don't know. I remember it though. I remember one of them saying it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they both mentioned it at some point, But yeah, I mean, it has. It was obvious. You could see it, and he was a healthy scratch for the last month of the season. So it probably was then Randy Carlyle if he was healthy scratching Vermette for that last month there.
So I mean, we're looking at Derek Grant, Andre Kasha, Antoine Vermette, Chris Kelly, Nick Ritchie, Jason Chimera, JT Brown. That's the 4 group we could start with. Derek Grant, yes. Kasha, yes. Nick Ritchie, unless they can find a deal for him to trade him elsewhere, which I would be okay with. They're definitely going to re-sign him. And then JT Brown's the other guy that I liked that I felt didn't get a fair shake in the Ducks lineup with the forward group. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, he'd be an okay guy to sign to play like a depth role, but I don't think they bring him back because he was healthy scratch with Antoine Vermette for a lot of the last bit of the regular season. So I don't see it happening. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it if he was to come back. I think the only way, again, he doesn't want to play in the minors. He doesn't want to play in the AHL. And I think the only way he comes back to Anaheim if it is kind of like a two-way deal where they can move him up freely down from the NHL to the AHL. So I think he ends up going somewhere else. And I'm sure somebody will take a flyer on him and play him on their fourth line. I just don't think it's the Ducks who end up doing it.
No, I'd agree. I mean, I think he didn't get a fair shake, but I could see them for a depth guy. But, I mean, Derek Grant is definitely going to get a contract after his contributions. Yeah. You got to sign Kasha. And then, I mean, Vermette, I remember him being great, like in NHL 2006 on Xbox. He was always a really fast guy. He's not that guy anymore. I don't think he'd be a good option coming back. They do love his face-off ability, but if he can't skate with these guys anymore, I just don't see them bringing him back either. On the defensive side of things, the three guys that I'm looking at on Cap Friendly are Kevin Bieksa, which we all know is basically said and done now. He was not happy with how the end of his season was with Anaheim, his playing time, and just kind of how he was treated, I guess, by the organization. He's not going to come back, and the Ducks don't want him back as far as I can tell. Andy Welinski will definitely get re-signed, and then Brandon Montour, I mean, you bet it. I mean, he's going to get probably paid the most out of anybody that we just talked about.
Yeah, and it's Brandon Montour and Andy Welinski are coming back. I think that's obvious, and then Montour is the one who's going to get the big contract to come back and play regular minutes in the top four for Anaheim. Andy Welinski, again, he might be a part of that bottom pairing. He might be a guy who ends up playing in San Diego for a bit. I think he really hasn't proved himself. He didn't play awful in Anaheim, but he wasn't great, and he didn't really show that he was ready to be a mainstay on that bottom pairing. And then Kevin Bieksa, I mean, this is obvious. I know we speculated at times that he could come back for like a 1-year, $1 million deal, but based off his comments at the end of the regular season on the exit interviews, saying that he was kind of underutilized and he was disappointed that he didn't play in the playoffs. I don't think at this point there's any real hope for him to come back, which I'm sure a lot of fans are happy with. And honestly, I don't see a lot of teams really taking a shot on him. I think this might be it for him, at least in the National Hockey League. I mean, he hasn't shown any team any kind of good stuff for them to go out and sign him. So I think this could be it.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate just because him as a person, and he's a great dude. I've met him at the rinks a couple of times just because you run into NHL players around. There's so little amount of rinks that when their kids are playing hockey, that's where you just bump into these guys. Nice guy, funny guy. And I know that he was kind of one of those guys, I think teammates liked him a lot, but just kind of didn't mesh well with the organization, and that's just probably the end of his career. You're right.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. But, I mean, again, Antoine Vermette's a great guy. And unfortunately, it just didn't work out, and he's not going to probably stick around with the Ducks. And I'm sure the same goes for Chris Kelly and Jason Chimera. But you don't pay guys to be good guys in the locker room. You want them to participate, and you want them to be a big part of the team. And they're just not going to cut it. And Antoine Vermette, obviously, that showed that they had always liked his faceoffs, like you said. But then that kind of wore off when the legs kind of gave out a little bit more. And then he was healthy scratch, and the faceoffs didn't matter anymore. You could bring in a guy like Derek Grant on the fourth line, and you lose maybe 2 or 3 faceoffs a game. But, I mean, they finally saw that really doesn't come back to hurt you that much. I mean, Antoine Vermette comes in the lineup, and maybe he wins you 2 or 3 more faceoffs a game. But if you can't control the puck in their end, that's not going to do anything for you.
Yeah, no thanks. I mean, you can't play forever.
Yeah. So let's go on to, I guess this would be the last question. So Chase asked on Twitter, he said, what prospects do you think will come up to play for the Gulls next year? So not coming up from the Gulls to Anaheim, but some of the prospects we have playing in junior coming up to play for San Diego.
I mean, shoot, we're talking right now about.
Sorry, you cut out there.
Comtois, is he somebody that the Ducks would bring to the Gulls, or is he still too young? He's going to play in junior.
For Comtois, he still has junior eligibility. He's only 19, and he just got he just got traded to Drummondville from Victoriaville, so he'll actually be back with a different team, but he'll be back in junior next year. Same goes for Antoine Moran, who, after winning the Mem Cup, gets traded to Halifax, who's hosting the Mem Cup